Hey, how's it going, guys? This is your boy Hazzed, and today we're on the battle for Azeroth Alpha. Going to be taking a look at Unholy DK single target and AoE DPS, since you said that's what you wanted, so that's what we're going to do. So let's jump into this and talk about talents and rotation.
It's who we are, it's what we do, we've come so far, and now we pay the price, so don't even cry. The world is breaking down, and I cannot leave the ground.
Starting off, we got to take a look at Unholy DK's talents, just see what we got going on for that single DPS pressure. As for the level 56 talent, we'll be running Ebon Fever. Now, this ability will give you a little bit less burst than Bursting Swords, but it's going to give you better overall DPS throughout the entire fight, especially if it's going to go 5 minutes plus. As for the level 57 talent, we'll be using Pestilent Pulses. After every 8 Festering Wounds burst, you gain 1 rune, which will give you a bit more consistency throughout the fight. And we got Unholy Frenzy, so when you're bursting those wounds, it's going to give you 40% increased attack speed for 2.5 seconds throughout the fight. As for the level 60 talent, we'll be running Sledge Belcher, just because this guy does a lot of melee damage throughout the fight, like an insane amount of melee damage throughout the fight. Also popping up that big dark transformation on him, turning him into a crazy abomination. I don't even know what you'd call that weird thing. Does a lot of damage, especially in the AoE situations. As for the level 90 talents, we're going to be rocking Infected Claws to give us a little bit more consistency and manage to burst more wounds and benefit from it using Unholy Frenzy and Pestilent Pulses. As for the level 100 talent, we're going to be running Dark Arbiter for single target, just because dumping an insane amount of runic power into Dark Arbiter is going to result in a lot of single target damage for 20 seconds, and it's really going to be where the majority of our burst comes from, besides using Army of the Dead and of course our Giant Abomination for some crazy single target burst damage. So let's go ahead and talk about how I went about getting these specs for this video, how I went about getting these numbers for Unholy, and I'll let you guys know what's going on and how I'm going to open this and have a brief conversation about the rotation. So the first things we're going to do with this Unholy DK rotation is pop Army of the Dead, and as soon as that's ready to go, we're going to throw out Dark Transformation, since we no longer have the legendary shoulders anymore at level 120. You don't have to wait to use that with Dark Arbiter. We're going to throw up basic cooldowns like a trinket, strength proc trinket that I managed to get doing dungeons the other day, and Blood Fury. And then after that, we're going to open up with Outbreak, and at that time, obviously, our army's going to jump on him, our pet's going to jump on the target, dealing quite a bit of damage, and then we're going to spam our Festering Strikes up until the point that we either have 5 to 8 stacks of Festering Wound, and at that point we should be roughly 80 to 90% runic power, and at that point is when we're going to be proccing Dark Arbiter and unloading as much runic power as possible into the target, proccing Festering Wounds afterwards, or hitting Scourge Strikes if we have enough pustules on the target, dealing quite a bit of single target and a little bit of AoE pressure if there is multiple adds out there. And we just kind of continue that throughout the fight, hopefully not letting our diseases fall off and proccing up Dark Transformation whenever it comes up. Now, it is going to be like a 5-minute test, just like the Frost DK ones, so Dark Arbiter should come up twice within that time, so you may want to pre-gather your death coils before using Dark Arbiter, kind of like you do with the breath spec, to generate more burst, and then continue the fight through that simple rotation that we're talking about. So you can see down in the right hand corner, we got our little stopwatch going on there. We've got Army of the Dead. What we want to do is proc Army of the Dead, and as soon as that's over, we're going to be popping the global just afterwards, because you always want to pre-pop Army of the Dead before the fight and then go in with it afterwards. So we're going to pop Army of the Dead, and just at that time is where that didn't work out. It all did it. Now we're going to retry that. We're going to pop Army of the Dead. We're going to hit our stopwatch at the same time. It'll put us a couple seconds behind. Army of the Dead's up. We're popping major cooldowns, and now we're going in on the target, just like we said we were going to do. Getting up as much wounds as possible right now is where we're going to proc Dark Arbiter and start dumping out those huge death coils. Now, as you can see in our DPS is hitting about 10k, which is fairly good for Frost and Unholy, because Frost had about a 10k DPS single target. Now, I do have a little bit more gear than I did on the Frost DK at the moment, so we should do a little bit, we should be doing a bit better as Unholy than we did as Frost. But overall, we should be seeing some pretty good DPS. We're reaching about the, see what marker are we hitting right now? About the 40 to 50 second marker, and we're still keeping about 9k DPS, which is fairly solid. Dark Transformation should be coming back up fairly soon. I do have to focus a bit more on this rotation than I generally do my other rotation as Frost, because I'm not as used to playing Unholy, obviously. I mean, I don't know if it's easy to tell, but I just let my plague fall off again. Can't let that plague fall off. We got to keep managing that. Going over the Unholy DK AoE for the level 56 talent, we'll be running either Ebon Fever or Bursting Swords. Both of them are really good for damage, while Bursting Swords is going to give you more burst and a little bit more downtime, and Ebon Fever is going to give you a little bit more uptime and a bit more overall damage. So you kind of got to pick your poison between those two stats. As for the level 58 talent, we'll be running Clawing Shadows for AoE, since Defiled causes anything inside of it to take cleaving damage from Clawing Shadows, and Clawing Shadows hits a little bit over twice as much as Scourge Strike does in single target / AoE situations, increasing our AoE damage by quite a bit. And of course, since we're rocking Defiled, throwing down your Defiled is going to increase the mastery you gain while just standing in while a bunch of creatures stand inside of it. So this is where Unholy DKs gets kind of fun, because as you saw, Unholy DK and single target DPS with Army of the Dead up is on par with Frost DKs. I'd say they're pretty close to being equal in the single DPS category. The only thing that would separate them is Army of the Dead is on a 10-minute cooldown and most likely won't be able to be popped in shorter dungeons on every boss, or even in Mythic Pluses. Usually you don't have 10 minutes between each of the bosses and you end up not having it. So at the moment, of course, with the removal of legendaries, Unholy DK single target damage, at least consistent, is a bit less than it was throughout the dungeon. But at the moment, AoE though, AoE has some pretty crazy AoE, a bit better than Frost. Now Frost we saw could get up around 15k, probably with this gear around 17k, but I've seen Unholy DK burst for over 22k DPS. So we'll go ahead and go start up on this target right here. The first thing we're going to do, of course, is pop our Dark Transformation on the target. We're going to pop any minor cooldowns like Blood Fury and Veil of the Agitated Blood. I don't even know if I said that right. It's animated. I don't know why I said agitated. All right, is that even a word? Really? All right, so just after we pop our Outbreak, we're going to throw down Defiled, where we're either going to use Festering Strikes to get more Festering Wounds, or we're going to proc an instant Clawing Shadows to take one of the Bursting Swords off the target, because most likely our Dark Transformation is going to do that. So let's go ahead and start off of our rotation. We're going to Dark Transformation, pop our minor cooldowns, hit Outbreak, and then go into Defiled. Binga, 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 binga. Alright, coming off real hard on the target, we had to actually use our Scourge Strike to generate up more pulses on the target so we can get some AoE. This time we started off, and as you can see there, we were doing around 20k DPS off the opener, doing about 5k more than Frost would be doing. I went ahead and let Plague fall off there. Don't pay attention to that. This isn't an official test right here. This is just going over how I went about doing the test. And in overall DPS and consistency, Unholy DK is a bit better than Frost. It definitely is. Inside like major AoE rotations, based on Defiled and the amount of dots you can put on targets and the consistent explosion, while being able to consistently reapply those dots in case you're pulling more adds throughout the dungeon. As you can see there, anything next to Clawing Shadows is just taking a pretty crazy amount of AoE burst, and it's fairly easy using this spec to keep up a solid AoE rotation, and you'll never really drop below, at least in the gear that I'm running, you'll never really drop below about 9k DPS. You'll keep that up throughout the entire fight. While we're here, we might as well spec over to Bursting Swords and see how high we can get this opener DPS here. Let's see if we can get it up there. I think we should be able to get it up there. We're going to go ahead and proc our minor cooldown. Oh, we don't have complete minor cooldowns. That's okay. We still should be able to get up there with Dark Transformation. We'll go ahead and Dark Transformation, apply our dots, and then throw down Defiled right over the targets there, and start getting a couple pustules to start exploding those all over the other targets. Now we hit about 21k there, just shy of the 22k marker I was talking about earlier, and we're back up to 20k. As you can see, it's going to give you quite a bit more opener burst. If we would have had our trinket procced with that and Blood Fury, it would have did quite a bit more DPS also. But as you can see, it's taking a turn for the worse just after that giant opener. As soon as you don't have any pustules to explode, or you get a little bit of downtime like it's doing right now, you're really going to start dropping in DPS, and soon enough you'll definitely drop below that 9k marker after a little while, a bit faster than the last opener.